I'm putting the trim piece under the window. There's a thin board behind which I've got to screw to the frame, and that's covered in vinyl. I've got a red vinyl to cover that. It's partly hidden behind this piece. That's just sitting there at the moment. I haven't screwed that in. That's mainly screwed in from the inside of the rear guard, and I'll probably put a screw in from this side too to hold it into the inner guard. The timber also, well, it's a separate piece of timber, comes down along the shape of the door there. That's that aluminium forging there. Another thin piece of ply which is screwed to the frame. Now it just provides, really, from what I can see, just a packing piece to provide a better seal for this other cover here to go against the frame. Also there's a weather seal I've got to make that goes basically for the white section of that pillar there, and that actually also screws into the frame. So it will have a piece of timber behind it. It will screw through that into the frame. Then this piece will come and cover that as well. Now I need to look to see whether in fact I can screw all that in place, or whether I've got to do some carpet work. Now I've got a feeling that I'm going to have to do some carpet work on the front of the rear seat. I'll just have to reposition myself. I'm actually lying down on a whole bunch of things in the front of the car. Okay, I've got myself back up. Now the piece I'm talking about, it's a bit hard to see down here because everything's black. The floorboard's black. So this is the floorboard here, and the metal here goes up to the front of the rear seat. It also angles off under this side piece here. Now that will be covered with carpet, so I've got a feeling I've actually got to carpet this piece. That'll be glued on. I'll have to put that piece in before I can actually finally fit this or screw that into its permanent position. But at this stage I can certainly make the cover piece here. I'll do that, and I'll make the seal that I've got to put in this joint here. Now I'm working on two things here. One is the covered side piece that goes alongside the rear seat, the window in here. This is the piece. It's covered in vinyl. Now I'm using a red vinyl, this vinyl here. So all I'll do is I'll cut the piece out and I'll glue it to this. Not glue it so much to the front, but I'll glue it over the back. And this will be screwed in, a couple of screws at the top here, and a few down here, and probably one at the back. None of those screws, can they? Certainly they can't be seen, this can't be seen. Some of these might be, so I'll have to use the upholstery cup washers on there. They screw into the aluminium frame behind the door, so that's fairly straightforward. The other thing I'm doing is making the weather seal. Now the weather seal comes down the door opening and probably comes up at least this high and goes right down to the floor, and it's also covered. I'm going to cover it in vinyl and see what it looks like. So it's a case of cutting a strip of that and then encasing that that piece inside it, and I'll sew along the edge, and that provides a seal on the inside of the door. I'd either use that or cloth. I'm tending at this stage to go for this, being more durable on the edge of the door. Problem with a cloth one, and I notice on other cars that have got cloth, as you get in and out of the door, you tend to rub this, and when it's material it soon wears through. The vinyl hopefully will be more durable. So that's fairly straightforward. It's just a case of cutting a length of that, which I'll do in a minute, and then run it through the sewing machine and, as I say, cover that strip. And it will be screwed also into the aluminium frame. So, but that's under this. It fits, or that lip of this will fit under that. So you won't see the screws that are holding this to the door pillar. So that's what I'm doing now. I say not that hard, but I'll just spend a bit of time making sure I've got the measurements right, then cut it out and then go from there. But once that's done, then I can go back to the car. I'll certainly mount this strip on the door. At this stage I'm inclined to mount that onto the body, and I'll see what I can then do with the rest of the trip. Now, it's been a few months since I've used the sewing machine here, and what I'm finding is that the tension on the thread is all out of whack, and it's actually not sewing properly. Now, this is a problem I frequently have, and the problem is this sewing room here is out in the backyard, and we've had a period towards the end of summer of a lot of rain, very high moisture levels, and what happens is that you end up getting certainly on this machine and others I've used in the past, you end up getting a corrosion problem, and not only on the working plates of the machine here where you feed the material through, but also mainly in the tension mechanism, which is this piece here. So what I've got to do is before I can get them to work, and I just tried it out just on a piece of headlining, and the tension's all over the place and it ends up snapping the thread and so on. So what I've got to do is start from scratch. I've got to pull the tension mechanism apart and clean up the metal surfaces. So what happens is it ends up getting a little bit of a film of corrosion inside the mechanism, and what that does is then jam the thread, so you don't get an even tension on the thread when the needle goes down, and it gives very irregular tension. Sometimes it's loose, other times it's tight and actually won't move at all. So what I have to do is to pull this apart, and I'll use this Scotch-Brite just to clean up the surfaces, and then I've got to then readjust the tension. I usually try with a piece of material, just happen to have some headlining there just to make sure things are right. So I'll do that, then run a test piece through on the material, and what I'm trying to do, of course, is to sew this weather strip, this one here, and I've actually got to get this material around there and eventually sew a seam along the inside there. Now at the moment that's just not going to do that, because it's as I say, the tension's not right. And I'll also have to change the foot I've got on here to make sure I've got the facility to put the thread close up to the cord. So it's got to come in very close to the cord there to provide a nice tight seal on that. So I've got a few things to do on the machine before I can even start work. And the first thing, of course, to clean it. Also, while I'm at it, and I usually do this anyway, I run oil through all the oil points just to make sure everything's lubricated, and then hopefully I'm ready to go. I mean, if you're using a machine on all the time, you don't have that problem. I don't use the machine all the time. It's very irregular use, so I've actually got to make sure everything's right before I can actually start doing the work. As I say, the test piece shows it's not right, so now I've got to go through the process of cleaning things up, re-oiling and getting the machine ready to use. So that's what I'm about to do. Now, if I was an experienced machinist, I wouldn't need to do this step here, and this is actually trying to make sure that the tension's and all right, and start again. Now, if I was an experienced machinist, I could probably skip this step. What I'm doing is actually trying to sew the pattern that I want to actually end up with. And I'm trying to sew as close as I can to the cord. I've got the foot positioned so it's as close as I can get it. Now, once again, an experienced machinist would then turn the power on and then just run it down. Well, I'm not that good, so what I do is I just do it by hand. A lot slower, but I get more control because, as I say, I'm not experienced enough to do it the quicker way. So I'll just turn this over by hand, very slowly, and I'm positioning the foot so it's right up against the cord. And if I'm doing it by hand, it doesn't all of a sudden get out of control and all of a sudden the material runs through and I've run off course. This way I can make sure I'm very close, because I want to have a fairly tight fitting against the cord. As I say, it's slower, but it gives me a lot more control. And what I'm doing is testing whether this is going to work or not, this arrangement of walking foot, and we'll also check the tension of the thread. Now, I've cleaned everything up, cleaned the tensioner. It appears to be working quite smoothly, but this will be the test before I actually run the proper piece that I'm going to make through the machine. So, just pulling it out. Cord off. Now, stitching seems to be fine. Thread could probably go a little bit more tension. I just pulled out, but that's what I want to end up with, it very close, or as close as I can to the cord. I could probably push it in a bit more, so I'll when I do the actual final seam with the piece I've cut out, I'll put it a bit closer. But I just need to tighten up the tension a bit more. The thread's a bit loose, but that's how I'll end up doing. I'll do it by hand. It'll just take time, but I've got more control. That won't hopefully end up with the finished product that I'm after. Well, this piece sewed up all right. The piping in here is fairly tight, so that should be fine. Where that goes is up under here. So what I've got to do now is to actually have a look at the car and see how I'm going to put this in. Whether in fact I'm probably tending to glue this to the body. Now I think gluing might be best. It'll stop it from pulling out. This piece here will actually screw, so the screw will go through the panel here and through that as well into the aluminium support, so that's not a problem. But I think glue would be better just to make sure that it's held in firmly all the way along. Now down here there's got to be a further piece of wood put in into the door pillar. I haven't done that yet, and this will be glued and screwed to that too. So, so I need to go and have a look at the car now and see how that's going to go in. This piece here, of course, is covered with the that side piece on the seat, what I'll call, I guess, a bit like an armrest. So that will cover all of this and cover the edge of that. So anyway, back to the car and see how things fit. Now this piece fitted in quite okay, not a problem there. The difficulty I've had at this stage is shaping this piece. It's not very wide, but if you don't get it right, it just makes it very hard to fit in, and it's easily snapped. So it's only a very thin piece of ply. The other problem I've found, just move over a bit, is putting this piece in. Now, I looked at some photos of how this upholstery was meant to go, or this piece, this weather strip here. It actually goes under, from the photos I've seen, goes under this chrome strip, so it starts up there and then comes down. It's going to be a little bit difficult to get in. It will go under this strip at the top, so it goes under there. Now, in order to do that, I've actually, this is too, or not wide enough in terms of the piece here. There needs to be another, probably need to add another 50 mil to that. And the reason for that is that this has actually got to sit out. If I tack that back to the steel, and oh, it's not steel, it's actually aluminium underneath, it will actually pull this back and not end up a proper weather seal here. So it's actually got to sit out about that far, which means I've got to have the vinyl going all the way back there, otherwise it's just going to pop out. So I'll just sew a piece in there. It's not difficult to do, and that'll enable me to actually tie it back this far, and then I then push this other piece on the outside, and then that will hopefully hold it in the right position. The other thing, of course, is that this wooden strip goes over the top, so that helps hold this piece in. So I'm hoping it's going to work out alright. So I'll just go back to the sewing room and add 50mm to the top end of this. That's not the top end, that's the bottom. To the top end of this I'll add 50mm. And then I'll use a combination of glue and screws to hold it to the metal back here down to, well, actually down to where this wood is. And then from there this will actually sit in on the wood and screw in there, and I'll be able to then push the armrest in to hold that out into its correct position. So fair bit more to do yet. It's very fiddly, but the aim is to try and get this strip sitting up rather than sitting down. It's easy to put it in and then it sits down, but it's not doing what it's meant to do. It's meant to provide I guess a bit of a wind seal up against the door there. Anyway, back to the sewing room. Now it's starting to come together. I've managed to screw the wooden trim in, put the piping down there. Now I've both glued and screwed that behind this panel. Down here the same. I've glued the timber and the piping in there as well, and I'll also put some screws in just to hold it in place. I thought I might have had to put some screws in this panel here, but I've got a feeling it should hold itself. If anything, maybe we'll have one screw, although I don't think it's needed. It sits under this wooden panel here, and at the bottom the armrest, which is this piece here, pushes up against the panel there and pushes it in, so it shouldn't really need any screws at all. What I've got to do next is to put the armrest in. Now it screws up from inside the guard, but what I've got to do is to get someone in the car and push the armrest up against the piping there, so the piping sits up high. It's a bit hard to do that on my own, so I need some pressure on that to hold that in. There are, I think it's 3 screws along this edge here, and I'll probably put one in the rear there just to hold it nice and tight against the inner guard. So it's getting very close to actually finishing this side. As I say, I just need to put this armrest in, and hopefully that will fit in nicely. I've finally finished putting in these side pieces. The piping around the edge of the door there, and this piece, the timber trim's in place. So that's now completed both sides. I haven't screwed these in permanently yet, and the reason that just relates to the carpet across the bottom, which I haven't done and I won't be doing for a while. What I'm going to do now is to actually address the door card, or door cards plural. I'll start at the rear and do these 2 rear ones first. The original ones are all beyond salvage. The timber is all rotted on the bottom end, so the timber's got to be replaced as well as the lining. It's quite a complex design, but I've got enough remnants of the old ones to work out how it's done. So I'll start planning that, and I've got the timber for the 2 rear doors, and I've certainly got enough vinyl for that, so I'll start on that now. Well, I've had a change of plan in terms of when I'll screw this in. I've just put it in there and noticed that down in the floor area it's going to make it very difficult to get the carpet in, so particularly in around here. And also, I think I mentioned before, the carpet's got to go on the front of the seat here, so I need to address the rear carpets before I can actually screw that in, because it sits over the carpet. So that will have to do at the moment in terms of how far I can go. It seems to fit quite nicely up against the piping. That will go in further when the seat pushes it in. So I'll now start on the other side of the car and basically repeat this. So I better start cutting some wood and material for that other side.